Welcome to today's episode of the Leader to Leader podcast. I'm your host, Susan Spears, President and CEO of the Fredericksburg Regional Chamber of Commerce. I am so excited to introduce to our guest today. We have with us Amy Cherry Taylor. She is a realtor and associate broker of Amy Cherry Taylor and Associates at Avery, Hess Realtors right here in the Fredericksburg, Virginia region. Amy, welcome to Leader.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to see you here this morning. We've been seeing each other a lot in the community again here recently in 2022 after a couple of years of really being bundled down, right?
Yes, it's been wonderful.
It has been. And for our listeners, and Amy, some of our listeners are all around the world, so They're going to learn a little bit about you and the region and what you do here today. But lately, we've been seeing a lot of Amy out in the community. I've seen her speaking at a lot of different events, and it's just been really great to see her more and hear more of her story. To tell you a little bit of her background, she is from our region, and it's just south of Washington, D.C., if you're not familiar with this area. Technically, that's about 45 minutes from D.C., but with traffic, it can be 2 or 3 hours, right? Yeah. But I love that in your bio, one of the things that Amy says is that she is an avid equestrian and a huge animal lover. So we might get a chance to talk about that when we also talk about the great things that she's doing in business. She has a team that is named within the top 5 medium-sized teams in the state of Virginia, and that's happened many times for selling over 125 million annually in local real estate. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you look like you have a great team. They have a great social media presence, and she got her BA in communications from George Mason University, which is up in Northern Virginia. And she is a mother of 2 wonderful sons and the wife of a dedicated former Marine and police officer. What an awesome human you are.
Oh, geez, thank you.
Yes. But now, okay, so I've teed you up, and let's let our listeners learn a little bit more about the real you.
Sure.
So tell us a little about your journey.
Sure. Well, like you said, I'm from Spotsylvania. I grew up here, went to George Mason, majored in communications, and for me, a lot of my journey has just been about working with people. I've always wanted to get out of something, whatever I put into it. And I felt like if I could start my own organization, if I could lead a team, if I can pour into people, if I can help serve people like our clients, and also the members of our team, then hopefully we can all be successful. We can all just gain so much from it, meet our goals, be happy in life, be successful. And so that's what it's always been about for me.
Yeah, so you're describing a real relational leadership style.
I'm very relational. That has been the foundation of everything that I've done. I've actually had to work very hard in my business to bring on the other side of it, just because I'm very much an empath. I'm very much, always, feeding off of other people and trying to make sure that I'm serving them in the way that they need to be served, and I'm meeting their goals in the way that they need to be met. But for me, it's also how do they feel throughout that journey? And that's very much how I've been with my team, and how I've created my team was through really finding the right people, finding the people who have the same morals, the same values. That's who I want to surround myself with. We can all learn real estate. We can all do those things that we need to do. But for me, it's always about the people.
Yeah, that's great. What are some of the things that you do to make the folks around you feel listened to and encouraged?
I think I try to treat them like I want to be treated.
Okay.
I know that's kind of the golden rule.
Yes, yes.
Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. But to me, that is absolutely true. I think that I really try to get to know my team. Actually, many of my team members I've known for 10, 15, 20 years.
Okay.
I've known them for a long time, and it was, again, surrounding yourself with those people that you feel like you want to be surrounded with to bring out the best of everybody all the time. But to me, it's really getting to know them and their style. What did they need to be successful, both in their personal life and their business life, and really trying to make sure that I listen and that I treat each person the way they need to be treated, not the way I feel like I should be treating them.
Right. So what you described is actually the platinum rule that we mentioned in Leadership Fredericksburg, which is do unto others as they would have done unto them.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize
right,
that.
because what you described, that you're already doing that. So the way that, like perhaps like if your style is, maybe you don't need somebody to tell you great job.
Right.
But the other person does need that. If you only did unto like yourself, you wouldn't tell them, and even though you thought they were doing a great job, because it's internal. You're kind of keeping that to yourself.
It really is. Yes. It's like, my two boys grew up in the same family. They're both boys, but they also are both very different.
Yes.
And they need different things from me. So same thing in business, same
right.
thing in, I think, in life, is trying to figure out what that is to have those best relationships you can have.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're doing a really great job with that.
Trying.
Yeah. Early on, I don't know about you, like some of our first jobs, I was in retail. I started in retail as side jobs in college, and then ended up in retail for a long time until I came to the chamber. And so a lot of that training is around customer service. And, if you're relational, you are, I am, that's pretty natural to us anyway, but it is a transferable skill to know, no matter what role we have, to serve others.
Absolutely. That and advocacy, that's always been, I think, even since I was little. If I really wanted something, I'd write a letter. Yes. To my parents, and then I would present it.
You write your parents a letter.
I did.
love it.
Especially if I felt like I was getting in trouble, I'd write a letter so I could explain, my side. And then, always, going through college, afterwards I worked for a lobbying firm. That's all about advocacy.
Oh, sure.
It's about, advocating for what your clients are trying to, to do. And I mean, even actually my oldest son brought me a letter a few years ago in high school.
He inherited it.
And I'd never even told him that. And he wrote me a letter, and he was trying to advocate why he wanted to do some social media stuff. And part of me wanted to allow it so bad because he wrote the letter.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
But
awesome.
it was still a no.
It was still a no. Yeah, okay. It was still a no. But yeah, so advocacy too, right? So I think that's always been a huge part for me.
Yeah, and advocating, the people around you sometimes aren't going to stand up for themselves.
Right.
So being that person that can help encourage, I think, sounds like that's part of your role too.
Yeah, that's just something I naturally do. I think it's just something that, it's, you've probably seen that little meme that goes around. My husband brings it up all the time, I'm not bossy, it's leadership skills.
Oh, yeah, right, right.
It's that whole kind of thing.
Love it. I love it. So how do you think that team around you would describe you if you weren't in the room? There's a tough one.
That's a tough one. Well, I hope they would say that I'm very dedicated, certainly hardworking. I always tell my boys that somebody can always be better than you, but they can't always work harder than you.
Yeah.
So that's always been a foundation for me. So I think they would definitely say hardworking. Hopefully they would say happy, energetic.
Yes.
That's something that I, get from my mom and try to continue to be. But I think those would probably be, and very dedicated to my profession. I want to always learn and do the absolute best that I can so that I can do the best for my clients. Yeah. So I think that's hopefully what they would say.
Yeah. And you just, you really just described Gen X. I mean, this is two Gen X's sitting here together.
True.
And I lately I've been talking about Gen X a lot because I don't know about you, but I've been to a few meetings or events or read articles really giving us a bad rep for the things you just talked about, for having work ethic, for being loyal, for being dedicated. That right now isn't very fashionable.
No, and that's also something that's kind of bothered me because it's almost like if people think sometimes that you're too busy, they can think that's a negative. I always say if you want something done, ask somebody busy to do it.
I agree.
Because you know how to get it done. But there's also balance. And, my oldest graduated in 2020. And when he graduated, I looked back and had a lot of reflection, and I didn't miss anything. I was there, I was there at every practice, every game, any field trip I could go on. If he was sick, I was home, So yes, I am very busy and I do accomplish a lot, but I time block. I do what I need to do when I need to do it. So I'm very, very focused. And I get up very, very early to get a lot done. But I feel like you can do all those things. And, you are always trying to strive to do the best that you can. And you do fail. You're not perfect.
You're human.
Exactly, you're human. But at the same time, I don't think that there's anything wrong with being a hard worker. It doesn't mean you're letting everybody down around you if you are.
Right, and having the best 80s hair and music too, right?
I mean, seriously.
Right. Okay, we'll come back to that. But tell me a little bit more about you said you do the time blocking. That may be a time management thing that could be helpful to one of our listeners. Tell us a little bit about your process and what you do there.
Sure. Time blocking is something that I started to do probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And that's when I realized I really had to prioritize, okay, what do I absolutely have to get done today? And there's a few things in my profession I have to get done every single day. What I normally do with my time blocking is I start by putting in my son's schedule in my calendar. And I also have my husband in my schedule. Like, we do date night every single week. We didn't get to do that for many, many years. He worked nights for about 13, 14 years when he was in law enforcement. So once we stopped that, date night does not get moved. That is an appointment. That is important to me, important to him. So the first thing that goes into my schedule is my family schedule. And then I have all of my available appointments around it. And then every single day I put in there exactly what I know needs to be done. And for me, I do it early. I get up really early. I'm an early morning person. I never used to be, but
What's
I am
really
now.
early?
I usually get up at 4:30.
Okay.
4:15, 4:30 is usually when I wake up. I always work out first thing in the morning.
Awesome.
That to me, is something I do.
Everything's quiet.
Everything's quiet. It's me time.
Yes.
I feel better throughout the day if I have. But then my most important things I try to do early in the morning.
Okay.
And block those in. And everything else goes around it.
Yeah, so that's really, you've prioritized.
Yes.
And a lot of folks will say family first or whatever. I mean, it's easy to say that those are our values, but you really put it in front of yourself and made it your value.
I have, and I find that, if I have something with my son at 6, if I'm offering a 4:30 appointment because I know that, that's when I'm available, or even maybe an 8 o'clock Zoom when it's done or whatever, if I say, are you available at 4:30 or 8, they don't necessarily, that's not a bad thing, And they're like, sure, 4:30 is great, or 8 o'clock's great, or can you do tomorrow or whatever. So it doesn't have to be something where you're letting anybody else down. You're just letting everybody know when you're available.
Sure, and because you took the time to plan that, you're not disorganized. You can say, I already know that's, and it's probably very rare that you end up kind of double book your stuff.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it becomes, a day might get missed. You might, things can spiral a little here and there, but that's probably more of a rarity for you.
It's gotten that way over the years. At the beginning, I wasn't so good.
Well, we have to learn this, and that's what we're hoping someone's going, oh, that's a great tip. You have to figure it out as you go, right?
You do, especially it's hard when you're a people pleaser and you want to make everybody happy, and that, is definitely something that's always been a challenge for me because I always want everybody to be happy. So, but I've just learned that that's one of the best ways to do it because it is very organized that way, and I can fit everybody in. And sometimes I need to move things around, and I absolutely am very flexible. I can do that.
Yeah.
But it works.
Good. That's really good. Early on, in my chamber career, I did one of the 360, the tests that we give folks in Leadership Fredericksburg, but I took it, when I was new. And my coach at the time told me, you say yes to everything. You're a people pleaser. And I hadn't identified that yet. So I hadn't realized that was one of the ways that I was spreading myself too thin. And I often would resent sometimes some of the things I was doing, and it wasn't their fault because I said yes.
Right.
So then I learned the power of no, the positive power of no.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be done in a negative way.
No, it doesn't. But for a people pleaser, that's one of the hardest things to learn, I think. Yeah, I'm not good at no.
Yeah. I've learned to have the no for that priority list.
Yeah.
Or if it doesn't align with passion or values.
Yes, I think that's a great way. That for me is when I can say no comfortably.
Right.
Otherwise, to me, a lot of times it's still kind of an uncomfortable no.
Right.
But it's also something that I'm learning with age too. You know, like you're a little bit more empowered to say that sometimes and know that it's okay.
It is okay. Tell me about a person that's helped you along this journey. Somebody maybe that you consider a mentor. How why you would say that they were a mentor and how that's been of value to you.
So I would say one of my mentors is Hector Alcalde, who was the CEO of Alcalde & Fay, which was the lobbying firm that I worked for.
Okay.
I still consider him, he's like a grandfather to me.
Okay.
I got very lucky and fell into working for him where I probably didn't I didn't have the experience at that point to do that. And he just saw something in me and was like, you're going to work for me. And I was pretty fresh still out of college. And he is a dynamic man. He is incredibly powerful. He's very intimidating to a lot of people, just in his presence. Like he walks into a room and everyone looks. Like he always just commands the attention and the respect. And so, a lot of people just always were like, they would come up to me and say they need to talk to him, and I was kind of one of his gatekeepers. What kind of mood is he in today? Can we go talk to him, or should we come back? And I'm like, just go in there, And Hector, I have a very strong father, so for me, that was something that it was okay. Like
you kind of attracted to it.
Yeah, it didn't intimidate me. I respected it, but there's also a difference between being intimidated and having the respect. But he really taught me how to communicate effectively early on. How to advocate. I mean, I know I keep saying that word, but it's a big word for me, and I learned so much from him about that. And he's just a very, very special person to me. I think if I hadn't had that experience, early on working for him, I probably wouldn't approach business the way that I do now. I'm not afraid to advocate when I need to. I'm not afraid to get firm. Nice. I'm not afraid to stand up, which I think we were talking even earlier before we started, where I'm better with that in business than I am personally, but I don't feel like I would have been able to do that in business if I had not had that experience with him.
Well, that's really powerful because, so that's a few years ago, but it's still got an effect on you today. And
absolutely.
I wonder how many people he's had that effect on, or if he even realizes. Sometimes, they don't always know.
They don't always know. And, and he and I really also bonded through horses. Horses have been a huge thing in his life, and he had heard that I had horses. And he actually gave me one of my horses, who ended up being one of my heart horses. He did 4-in-hand driving, a lot of racing, and he had a big prospect that had been hurt and needed a new home and was going to be a wonderful hunter jumper, and he gave him to me. And that at that point in my life, that was so huge. I mean, we were newly married. I could never have afforded a horse like that. And
right.
So we just, he just had a huge impact on me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm not a horse person. I'm a Labrador person.
I love them too.
Yes, and so I can easily speak the Labrador dog language.
Yeah.
But I'm certain that's probably perhaps a peaceful place, or a place you go for your thoughts. Tell me about what that means to you, your relationship with horses, or in general.
Well, it's interesting that you asked me that, because I don't think I have really recognized that that's what it is for me until probably the last 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
I've ridden since I was about 3 years old. My dad has always, he's got horses now. He's a ranch out in Texas.
Nice.
He had a pony for me as soon as I could ride. And, over the years, it has absolutely been, my place where I go, where it's just me and my horse and nature and peace and calm, and it's an escape for me. It's something that I just absolutely love. My boys started riding the second I could put them on a horse, and my 15-year-old right now is actually just kind of really wandered back to that.
Okay.
He's just doing a lot with his football career right now, and horses for him are becoming an escape, and it's just this amazing thing to kind of watch. But yeah, they've always been a huge part of my life. I have 2 horses right now, and one just came to me that is kind of from a rescue type situation. And I just think sometimes, like, you learn so much from them. Like, I've already bonded with him so much in the last month, and I feel like we need him as much as he needed us. But you don't always know that until you really get in the middle of it.
How often do you get to spend time with the horses?
Well, up until last year, I had boarded my horse almost an hour away. My trainer is like one of my absolute closest friends, and with being as busy as I was, I couldn't go out as much, so I needed to have him in a place where I knew he was being taken care of like I would. So twice a week at that point in my life, every Thursday morning, like, my husband would take the boys to school, and I would leave bright and early, and I would go ride, be back in time for my meetings. It was part of my time block. So Thursdays and Saturdays were my time. If I ever could scoot out any extra, that was bonus, but it didn't happen often. Now they're right by me, so I see them almost every day, every other day.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
you worked your way towards that sort of utopia.
I did, without realizing it. I did. And even if it's just to stop by, a lot of times in the morning I will stop by, I will give them a treat, have a little bit of coffee with them, and off I go. So it doesn't have to be this where I have to show up and I have to groom them and ride them and da-da-da. I just need to be with them.
Isn't it funny? When I leave in the mornings, I have two black labs. One's a rescue. One, Theodore, is turning 7 this weekend.
Aww.
I know. It's so funny. But anyway, I have this talk with them when I leave.
Yes.
And we as humans, it's like, wait, I tell them, I kiss both their noses. I tell them I love them. If it's me coming by at lunch or their dad, I call Richard their daddy. I'll say, Daddy will be here today. And then you'll see me later, see you in a few hours. And then I tell them they're perfect.
I do the same thing. I am so sorry I have to go to work now, but I'm just going to work so I can pay for you. Like, I have the same conversation.
I mean, those are those human elements, though, that really bring us joy in our lives, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So sometimes people that will walk their dogs, that's what I'll do, may listen to music or something. See how I'm pulling it back to that where I said it earlier?
Yes.
I doubt you listen to music when you ride your horse. But let's talk about that for a second, since we both mentioned briefly Gen X and all. Like, what are the things that really stand out to you from being from that generation? If it's culturally, like something that you really loved or like still, or
it's so funny, but and maybe it's just because I'm in that whole world with my son now being, high school and, he plays football. So Friday Night Lights, but oh my gosh, it has brought me back so much to high school. And I loved it. We had bigger hair,
we kind of did.
Everybody went to the games Friday night, I mean, it was standing room only, all the pep rallies, all the great music, I mean, it was such a fun time. I loved it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm early 80s high school. I'm solid 80s. So high school, graduated 84, and then college was the second half of the 80s.
Yeah.
So all the way through, right? And so I mean, there's just so much there. But like heroes from and you're more 90s, but heroes like Bono came out then, right?
Yeah.
And I have a picture of Bono in my office with George Bush, where he was like crossing the aisle, if you will, as a musician. And he was on the cover of Time magazine, and it said, "Can Bono save the world?"
Right.
By the love message that he had.
Yeah. It was so much. Yeah, Bon Jovi came on the other day, and I was just like at the top of my
Oh, wait, she went there.
I did. I couldn't help it, but yeah, I mean, just such a great time. 90210 was like.
Oh, I love that show.
I was the exact year in high school and college that they were.
Okay.
So when they were sophomores, I was a sophomore. I so connected.
Which one's your favorite?
Oh my God, I used to love Jenny Garth.
I just kind of knew you were going to say Kelly.
She was one of my favorites.
It wasn't Brenda.
It was not Brenda, but I appreciate her now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And don't you kind of appreciate Brenda's mom now, too, and her dad?
Oh, my God. Yeah, you relate a little bit more.
He was like the accountant guy.
Yes, just a nice guy.
Yeah, they were like this nice family from the Midwest that went out to the heart of, all of it.
Yeah.
It was really, but you go back, if you see episodes today, there's all these lessons in those shows.
Always lessons. I was so excited
really
when they brought the reunion back.
They did, and they had a lot of social. The '90s shows had a lot of social issues.
Yes.
A Different World was one of my favorite shows back then, and when they had the characters get married, the two main ones, and they went out on their honeymoon out in L.A. They staged it so that the riots in LA happened right there, and they were just in shock because they were right in the middle of it and weren't used to being in something like that, And so for Middle America, it was all of it. That could be a learning lesson right there.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm rambling a little bit just to say you can find leadership lessons and learning everywhere you go if you choose to seek it and have maybe a open and positive outlook.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah. So much out there. What advice would you give someone just starting out today?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I would say to really follow your gut. To me, anytime I have a gut instinct, I've learned that I'm having it for a reason.
Yes.
And I've learned to follow it. Even if I don't really understand why at that moment, I'm very in tune with my gut. So I would say starting out, stay in your lane, go for it, do what you do best.
Yes.
You don't have to, this is really interesting. One of the very first speakers I ever heard was Marilyn Jennings.
Okay.
She came to an event. She was a realtor in Canada.
Okay.
She came to an event, and that was another probably turning point in my business.
All right.
Which, the owners of our company had no idea having her there would completely change my business, my outlook, my everything.
Powerful.
Very powerful. And at the time, she was selling these cassettes, like the cassette tapes that you could listen to in your car.
Love a cassette.
And it was like a 3-volume thing, right?
Yes,
so,
$9.99.
Oh, yeah. So I would listen to those because, being a realtor in this area, you're in the car a lot. Mm-hmm. So I would put them in and I'd listen, in between my appointments. One of the things that she said is do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. If everybody else is advertising in the newspaper, why do you want to advertise in the newspaper? If everybody else is doing this, why are you doing that? Like, you can still do it, and there's an important piece of doing it and having your name in the hat. But isn't it maybe more important to sit down and figure out what you can do different and what just don't be afraid to do something different. Don't be afraid to, come up with your own way. And I think, my business is very much my business, and somebody else's business is theirs. They're all different. They all run differently. But there's enough business for everybody.
Yes.
And I really believe that. I really believe that if you do what you are trying to do and you don't get dissuaded, by others. And I think it's important to take that outside information and the feedback and, the critical information that you're getting, the failures as much as the successes to kind of understand maybe what you're doing and to certainly pivot when you need to. But I think there's a lot of outside noise and there's a lot of quote unquote rules as to what you think you should be doing. Right. And in reality, I think you just need to do it your own way.
Yes, do it your own way. Mm-hmm. Did you ever go against your gut? And what'd you learn from it?
I have taken my gut into consideration. And the funny thing is I don't feel like I've ever really gone against my gut. I think that I've had to put fear aside. I have to be.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. I tend to be a little bit more on the anxious side sometimes. And I think maybe it is because I'm high energy and, this, that, and the other. But to me, I've learned to use it as a guide. It's not an answer. So I have to separate my gut from the fear sometimes. And I truly believe, I guess you asked me earlier about quotes, the bigger the risk, the bigger the return. I say it all the time. And I tell my boys the same thing. If it's the correct risk, right? Like you still have to make sure that it's an intelligent risk.
Right.
But sometimes your risks you don't really understand them. You don't really understand why you're being drawn to that. Mm-hmm. But there have been a few key times within my business, which has ended up growing my business, growing my team. And it hasn't been something that I probably would have thought maybe early in the year that would have happened. Right.
Right.
So yeah, I think so. But for me, it's separating that fear from the gut, the anxiety from the gut. And I think when I do that, I really know what my gut's saying.
So that's becoming more aware. For a time there, you probably didn't know, and then you became aware. Okay, wait, this is how I'm processing this.
Correct.
Becoming aware and then being intentional on how you move forward.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes the more fear that's there, the more that it means it might be right.
Yes, I know it. I know it. And stepping into it, kind of owning it. I'm a little bit calculated with that, making sure that I still know like all of my worst case scenario, all that stuff. But you still have to take that step. Well, we're already at our time to start to wind down here. Okay. Isn't that, it just goes by so
it goes
fast,
by so fast.
Having a nice conversation. So is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
Goodness. Well, again, just thank you so much for having me. To me, I think that it's really just continue to work hard, continue to strive for whatever the balance is for you. Like, balance is not the same for everybody.
Right.
So it's finding your balance. But just continuing to go for it and to really stay focused. I think right now, especially with everything happening in our world, all the noise around us. And I know I keep saying noise, but I feel like there's so much of it.
Oh, there is.
There's so
it's like 24 hours.
Yes, yeah. It's everywhere. Is finding that peace for yourself, for your family, for your business, and then just going for it.
All right, just go for it.
Go for it.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today with us on the Leader to Leader podcast. And thanks to our listeners for spending time with us today. I'm Susan Spears, and our guest today again was Amy Cherry Taylor, and she is a realtor and associate broker with Amy Cherry Taylor and Associates at Avery, Hess Realtors, right here in the Fredericksburg, Virginia region. If you haven't already subscribed to the Chambers We Are Business podcast, hey, would you go ahead and do so? Then you'll know when to listen to us, and we would love to spend more time with you in the future.